Are you ready for that? Can we jump in together? Can you handle it? Here's the question as it came to me on a piece of paper. I've done some things that have made me feel sexually impure. How do I go about regaining my sense of sexual purity? Wow. That is the question. And I'm going to look at it from a bunch of different angles today. Some of you, if you're a senior, perhaps you remember the last time that Andrea Cooper was speaking on our campus. It was when you were a freshman. She was last year in 2011. Andrea's daughter, Kristen, was a Baker student back in the 90s. She was a student here at the same time my daughter was. She was an Alpha Chi, and she's a member of the concert choir. Andrea travels the country telling Kristen's story because it's a tragic story. She goes to college campuses, and she has ever since, telling this tragic story of acquaintance rape. And Kristen was raped in the summer at home in Colorado. She came back to school here, and her friends knew that she was troubled, and they tried to reach out to her, and nothing seemed to work. And so Kristen chose to end her life on New Year's Eve. She'd be 39 or 40 years old by now. There's a tree. I practiced this a lot yesterday, so this wouldn't happen. Could have happened anyway, so. There's a tree 1 inch north of the chapel in Kristen's honor. There's a plaque on the ground. Last week, I introduced Jeff Skillman. He was visiting here, he graduated in 2010, and he and another young man were the two people responsible for making sure that tree was planted and that there was a plaque. I think every Baker student needs to make a pilgrimage just out to that tree sometime before you graduate. Visit Kristen's tree. To read that plaque, the engraved plaque on the ground. Pay tribute to that woman. And also to pay tribute to everyone who's been the victim of sexual violence. And pay tribute to Andrea, her mother, who has saved countless lives for the last 20 years or so, going around college campuses, simply telling a Christian story. So in the most tender way, I say to you that it may be that you too have experienced what Kristen experienced. Maybe you've been violated sexually in ways that were against your consent. And so one way to look at the question, what do I do to regain purity, I have to talk about sexual violence as a part of that. To honor Kristen, to honor all victims of violence, all survivors. Maybe you feel damaged. And if you do, I want you to hear this. This is from my heart to your heart. As generally as I can say it. If you've been violated, you're not dirty. There's nothing you need to do to regain anything. There's nothing you need to ask forgiveness for. Nothing you need to undo, because violence isn't about sex, it's about power. Andrea has this great way of saying it. I've heard her say it a couple, 3 times. This is Andrea's words. She said it the last time she was here in last auditorium. No one can ever take your virginity without your permission. So her words are, if you've been molested, you're still sexually untouched. Like I say, I got to talk about that angle. If every time I talk about sexual activity and your feelings about it. But I want to move on now and talk about some different other kind of angles. Maybe the question about retrieving sexual purity Maybe what you want to know is if you've been sexually active and feel bad or guilty about it, feel impure, what do you do then? My mother was the president of her senior high school class. I knew that for a long time. But it was just 4 or 5 years ago that I discovered something else, that she was originally elected vice president. But in the fall of her senior year, the class president came to school and was pregnant. And so in southern Alabama's version of stoning her to death, she was expelled from school, the class president, whisked away to give birth in secret. And so my mom became the class president because she was next in line. Now, that was in 1942. That's a long time ago. 1942, Foley, Alabama. If you've been to Orange Beach or to Gulf Shores, you've been through Foley, Alabama. That's where all the outlet malls are now. That's where my mom grew up. And that's what they did then there when someone violated community standards for sexual purity. Get them out of the way. Forget them. Send them off somewhere. Don't talk about it. And we do better now because we know better now. We realize that the last thing that any young mother needs to have done is to take her education away from her. So maybe in high school or in college now, you've had classmates who are expecting children who are mothers or fathers. We don't shun them away. We keep them in school because that is the greatest hope for mothers and fathers and also for children who never asked to be conceived, nor did they ask to be born. In fact, they originally voted on president of the senior class of Foley High School, did live a life of poverty, and she died young. The crowd asks Jesus, what shall we do with her? What shall we do with her now that we have found her out? Well, they were Bible scholars who knew the answer. And I looked it up, and I want to put it on screen for you. Here's what it says, please. If a man is caught lying with the wife of another man, both of them shall die, the man who lay with the woman as well as the woman. And so you shall purge the evil from Foley, Alabama, and from Israel. If there is a young woman, a virgin already engaged to be married, and a man meets her in the town and lies with her, you shall bring them to the gate of that town and stone them to death. The young woman, because she didn't cry for help in the town, the man, because he violated his neighbor's wife. In those days, you see, if you were engaged, it was like being married without having sex. That's why Mary, the mother of Jesus, was such a scandal herself. Because it was like she was married, but not really. She stoned the woman because she didn't cry for help, and the man because he violated his neighbor's wife. So you shall purge evil from your midst. So see, they knew the answer. It was law, it was policy, standard operating procedures. It was part of their mission statement, for goodness sake. Thank the Lord that we know enough now not to follow that part of the Bible. Do you understand that we don't follow all parts of the Bible? And isn't it a good deal? We don't follow that part. Thank goodness that we don't think God had a part in writing that. I know we don't think that because there's not a pile of corpses out by the quick shop of people who have gone through Baldwin and found committing adultery and then stoned to death. We don't do that. We don't do that anymore. Jesus gave a different answer. You who are without sin, cast the first stone. You get what that implies? You who are without sin, cast the first stone. One of the implications that I get from it is that whether it's shoplifting or grand theft auto, I mean the actual crime of the game, or adultery or murder or whatever it is, we all got something. We all have something. Something that we're ashamed of, something we've done or haven't done, that we shouldn't have done or should have done. We all got something. Every one of us. And in that sense, there's no one ever that can regain purity of any kind on their own. Purity is given through Jesus Christ. Jesus makes us pure. You who are without sin, cast the first stone. So when we judge each other, whether it's about sex or anything else, Jesus has this irritating, profound way of turning the spotlight back on us. If you're without sin, you cast the first stone. And we all left. And Jesus says, I don't condemn you either. Be on your way and don't do it again. That's all. Be on your way. Don't do it again. Maybe another angle is the way that you and I judge ourselves. For those moments, you know those moments. Those moments when you go too far, do things you didn't want to do to begin with, maybe under the influence, whatever it was, cross the line of your own good intentions, violated your own principles, all that stuff. You know, those mornings when you wake up and you think about your life, and your life sure sounds like you're singing a country and western song. If you ever wake up in the morning and your life reminds you of a country and western song, it's time to change your life. You know, like, do you remember that song? You guys are probably still in high school. I don't even know my last name. You know the song? You know, if you ever wake up in the morning, look over with everybody next to you and say, what was I thinking? You know, maybe that's not the right place for you to be. You wake up and say, blame it on the Cuervo. I don't even know my last name. If that's your song, really, maybe you need to go in a different direction. I wonder, sometimes we tie ourselves up to the stoning post. We throw rocks at ourselves, condemning ourselves for our mistakes. It's true that there are no do-overs, isn't that right? No replays. And all of us probably have a long list of would-have, should-have, could-haves. I do. I suppose you do too. Regrets. Quote Frank Sinatra, not country music, but Frank Sinatra. Regrets. Yeah, I have a few. Don't you? Regrets. The college graduate told me once that after college, when he decided to settle down and commit to someone, he felt like he just needed to build a brick wall separating his college past from his own future. A brick wall that was so sheer and so high and wide that it could not ever possibly climb that wall and go back to the way it used to be. How do you reclaim purity? How do you reclaim sexual purity? It's simple. It's easy for me to say. It's easy to believe. It's hard to get it in your heart. When I tell you what I believe, listen up. There's nothing in the world that you have ever done. There's nothing that you have ever done nor could ever do that is beyond Jesus' capacity to forgive. Jesus is stronger than you. Isn't that good news? There's nothing you can do or fail to do or anything you've ever done that is beyond Jesus' capacity to forgive you. I wish someone had said that to the senior class president of Foley, Alabama in 1942. Her life might be different now. It might have ended up differently. If you feel impure, forgive yourself. Lay down your stones, your rocks, and unclench your fists. Forgive yourself for whatever you've done. Because the fact is, none of us can retrieve purity. Purity comes from God, who grants it to us over and over and over again. Our God is a God of multiple chances. Multiple chances. You know, on the night that Jesus was resurrected and he met the disciples in this locked room and Thomas and all that story, part of that story is that Jesus gave the disciples the authority to forgive sins. Look it up.